The wind howled through the empty station like a ghost with unfinished business. Snow clung to the rusted tracks, and under the flickering lantern light, she stood, trembling, clutching a worn suitcase, eyes glassy with frost and fear. That was the night Samuel Hartley, the richest rancher in 3 counties, found the woman who would change his life forever. If you love tales of the untamed frontier, saddle up and subscribe. The West is full of stories waiting to be told. The winter of 1887 had come early to Wyoming. The town of Cold Creek was buried under a sheet of white so thick that even the coyotes had gone quiet. Samuel rode in that night with his hat pulled low, his breath turning to steam in the air. He was headed back from Cheyenne, where he'd closed another land deal that would make him even richer, though money never warmed him the way the fire in his ranch house used to when his wife was alive. She'd been gone 2 winters now, taken by fever, and since then Samuel had become a man of silence, living with his grief the way others lived with the wind, constant, cold, and impossible to fight. The train station sat just outside of town, a lonely place where few stopped this time of year. Samuel had planned to collect a shipment of supplies, maybe share a word with the old station master, then head home before the storm worsened. But when he dismounted, boots crunching through the ice, he saw her, a young woman, standing alone near the bench, snow building on her shoulders. Her coat was thin, city-made, not built for frontier winters. "Miss," he called, his voice rough as gravel. She didn't move at first. Then she turned, and he saw the blue tint on her lips. He stepped closer. "You'll freeze out here." "I missed my train," she said softly, her voice trembling. "It won't be back till morning." Samuel looked toward the tracks, no sign of another train tonight. "Not in this weather." He frowned. "You got a place to stay?" She shook her head, clutching that suitcase like it held her life. Maybe it did. The wind tore through again, and he didn't think twice. "Come on," he said. "You'll catch your death here." Inside his wagon, she sat silent, eyes darting over the snow-blind plains as they rode toward his ranch. Samuel kept his focus ahead, though he couldn't help glancing her way. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair pinned under a bonnet, skin pale from the cold. Not the look of a frontier girl. "You from back east?" he asked. She nodded. "Boston. What brings you this far out?" "I'm a nurse," she said after a pause. "There was supposed to be a post waiting for me in Cheyenne, but the letter never came. The man who hired me died before I arrived." Samuel said nothing, but his jaw tightened. Out here, death came easy, sickness, accidents, bullets, it didn't much matter who you were. When they reached the Hartley ranch, the wind had turned savage. He helped her down, led her inside the big, empty house. The fire still glowed faintly in the hearth. He took her coat, hung it near the door, then handed her a blanket. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely above the crackle of the fire. He nodded, then poured her a cup of coffee. "Name's Samuel Hartley." She looked up, eyes meeting his for the first time. "I'm Clara," she said. "Clara Monroe." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy, like 2 strangers sharing ghosts they hadn't yet named. That night, Clara slept in the guest room, the same one Samuel's wife used to prepare for travelers who came through. He didn't sleep much himself. The storm howled against the windows, and he could hear her moving quietly upstairs. Something about her voice, her eyes, stirred something in him he thought the cold had buried. Morning came clear and bright. Samuel found Clara in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, tending to the stove like she'd lived there all her life. "You don't have to," he started. "I know," she said, smiling faintly. "But I needed to do something. It's warmer near the fire." He couldn't argue with that. Over breakfast, she told him more, how her parents had died in a cholera outbreak, how she'd trained as a nurse to help others survive what they couldn't. She'd hoped to start fresh out west, but fate had other plans. Samuel listened, really listened, something he hadn't done in a long while. Days passed, the storm lingering longer than expected. Clara stayed, helping around the ranch, tending to the horses, mending clothes, even patching up one of the ranch hands who'd gotten his hand caught in a gate. She moved with calm precision, a quiet strength that caught Samuel off guard. The men at the ranch began to talk, not unkindly, just the way men do. "That new gal's got something about her," one of them said. Samuel ignored it, but his heart didn't. One evening, he found her outside near the barn, watching the sunset bleed over the snow. "You ever seen colors like that back east?" he asked. She shook her head. "Back east, everything feels smaller. Out here, it feels like God forgot to put walls around the sky." He smiled, the first real one in years. "That's the West for you. Teaches a man to feel small again." She looked at him then, really looked, and something passed between them, wordless but alive. As the weeks turned to a month, rumors spread through Cold Creek. Some said the millionaire cowboy had found himself a new bride. Others whispered that she was hiding something, that no proper lady traveled alone that far west with just a suitcase and a story. Samuel didn't care what they said. But late one night, when he went to fetch wood, he saw Clara out by the stable again, clutching a small envelope, tears streaking her face. She didn't see him watching. The next morning, she was gone. Her room stood empty, the bed neatly made. Only the faint smell of lavender lingered. On the table lay a folded note, his name written in her careful hand. He stood there for a long time before opening it. "Mr. Hartley, thank you for your kindness. You saved me that night, but there are things in my past I cannot outrun, things that would bring trouble to your door. Please forget me. I am taking the morning stage to Fort Bridger. Clara." Samuel read it twice, then crumpled it in his fist. By the time he reached the station, the coach had already left. Snow blew across the empty platform, the same spot where he'd found her weeks ago. He turned to go, but something caught his eye, a man standing near the tracks, long coat, black hat pulled low. The stranger watched him with eyes cold as the wind. "You lookin' for Miss Monroe?" the man asked, voice low and mean. Samuel froze. "You know her?" The man smiled, not kindly. "Oh, I know her. She's got debts to pay, and I aim to collect." Samuel's hand moved toward his holster before he even thought about it. "If you're smart," he said, "you'll ride out of this town and keep ridin'. But the man just grinned wider. "You don't know what she's done, do you, cowboy?" The air between them felt like it could shatter. Somewhere in the distance, the whistle of a train echoed, long and lonesome. Samuel didn't blink. "Don't matter what she's done," he said. "Only matters what she's running from." The man's grin faded, his hand twitching near his gun. The wind howled again, sharp, cold, alive with tension. Then, in one motion, both men reached for their pistols. And the sound that followed shattered the silence of Cold Creek. The gunshot cracked through the frozen air like lightning splitting the sky. Crows lifted from the telegraph poles, scattering black wings against the pale morning. For a moment, all Samuel could hear was the echo bouncing through the hills, then the slow sound of boots crunching snow. The stranger lay face down near the tracks, his pistol half buried beside him, smoke still rising from the barrel. Samuel stood over him, chest heaving, the smell of gunpowder stinging his throat. He hadn't wanted blood. God knows he'd had enough of that in his lifetime. But the man had drawn first, and out here, hesitation could carve your name into a gravestone faster than mercy ever could. Samuel holstered his gun, eyes scanning the horizon where the stagecoach had vanished minutes earlier. He didn't know what kind of trouble Clara was in, but one thing was certain, if men like that were after her, she wouldn't last long alone. He mounted his horse, spurred it hard, and set off down the snow-choked trail, the wind clawing at his coat. The world blurred into white and shadow as he rode, thoughts pounding like hooves in his skull. Who was she really? What kind of past drove a woman to flee into the cold? He didn't have answers, only the pull of something stronger than sense or fear. By nightfall, the storm had risen again. Samuel followed the faint tracks of the stagecoach through the drifts until he reached an old way station, a half-collapsed barn with a single lantern glowing faintly inside. He dismounted, hand resting on his revolver, and stepped in. Clara was there. Huddled near the fire, the same suitcase beside her, her eyes wide when she saw him. "Samuel," she started, standing quickly. "Why'd you run?" he cut in, his voice low but roughened by the ride. Tears welled in her eyes. "You shouldn't have followed me. I told you, there are things you don't know." He took a slow step forward. "Then tell me." She looked toward the flames, voice trembling. "Back in Boston, I worked at a hospital for war veterans. There was a patient, a soldier named Marcus Vale. He'd lost everything, his leg, his family, his mind. One night, he came to me begging for medicine. He said he couldn't take the pain anymore. I gave him what he asked for, but by morning, he was dead. They said I helped him die. I was charged with murder." Samuel's jaw tightened. "And this man at the station?" "Marcus's brother," she whispered. "He swore he'd make me pay. I changed my name, left everything behind, but he found me." The fire popped, sending a spark into the dark. Samuel stared at her, not with judgment, but with something far deeper. "You did what you thought was right," he said quietly. "Out here, that's about all any of us can do." Her breath hitched. "You don't understand. They'll keep looking. If you stay near me, you'll get killed too." He stepped closer, the lantern light catching the scar on his cheek. A mark from his own past, when life and death had danced too close. "Miss Monroe," he said, "I've already buried one life I loved. I won't stand by and lose another." For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Then she moved, slow, trembling, into his arms. The silence that followed wasn't just relief, it was two broken souls finding warmth where the world had gone cold. By morning, they were gone, leaving only ashes in the hearth. Samuel rode with Clara toward his ranch, snow swirling around them. But the frontier had long memories, and vengeance traveled faster than forgiveness. 2 days later, just as the sun broke through the storm, a posse rode into Cold Creek. 3 men, all dressed in dusters, guns visible, their leader carrying a piece of paper folded neat in his pocket, a wanted notice bearing the name Clara Monroe. They stopped at the saloon, asked questions, left behind the kind of fear that makes whiskey taste like regret. By nightfall, they'd found their trail. Back at the ranch, Clara stood by the window, watching the snow melt from the roofs. "They'll come, won't they?" she said softly. Samuel loaded his rifle. "Let them." When the riders arrived, the wind carried the smell of gun oil and pine. The leader called out from the yard. "Samuel Hartley. You're harboring a fugitive. Hand her over, and you'll live to see another sunrise." Samuel stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand. "You boys ride a long way for one woman. She's wanted for murder." He spit into the snow. "Then you're looking for the wrong killer. Man who died in Boston was already dead inside. She just gave him peace." The leader's eyes hardened. "You got 3 seconds to move aside." Samuel cocked the rifle. "You just wasted 2. The first shot split the silence. The air filled with smoke and thunder as the ranch exploded into chaos, gunfire flashing through the snow, horses screaming, men shouting orders drowned by the wind. Samuel moved like a ghost between shadows, every shot precise, every step deliberate. Clara stayed low inside, reloading his spare revolver with trembling hands, whispering prayers she hadn't said in years. By the time the smoke cleared, two men lay still. The leader staggered toward the porch, blood staining his coat. "You'll die for her," he hissed. Samuel raised his rifle, eyes calm. "I already did, once." The man fell before he could fire again. Silence settled over the ranch, heavy, final, broken only by the soft cry that escaped Clara's throat when she stepped outside. Snow fell again, quiet and slow, covering the blood before the earth could remember it. That night, Samuel buried the men on the hill, under a cedar tree. Clara stood beside him, her hand finding his in the cold. "They won't stop," she whispered. "Then we won't either," he said. "There's land down near the Colorado line. Quiet, forgotten. We'll start over." She looked up at him, tears glinting in the firelight. "You'd give up everything for me?" He smiled faintly. "Ain't much worth keeping if it means losing you." Weeks later, Cold Creek awoke to find the Hartley Ranch abandoned. Some said the Millionaire Cowboy had finally ridden off for good. Others swore they'd seen him and a dark-haired woman heading south at dawn, wagon trailing behind them, the horizon burning red like promise. Years passed. The story turned to legend, how a rich man gave up his fortune for a wanted nurse, how their love outlived the snow, the guns, and the whispers of the frontier. Some even claimed that a small clinic opened years later near the border, built from the same timber Hartley once used for his barns, where a woman named Clara tended to the sick, and a quiet man with a scar on his cheek rode into town every morning to bring her coffee. No one ever proved it, but in the Old West, truth was just another ghost riding the wind. And if you listen close, when the nights turn cold and the train whistles through the dark, you might still hear them, the Millionaire Cowboy and the freezing nurse who found each other in the snow, and made history not with riches or gunfire, but with love that refused to die.